You may remember her from hit TV shows like Northern Exposure and Friday Night Lights, and big screen hits like Cliffhanger. But these days, Janine Turner is more than just an actress. She has become the author of A Little Bit Vulnerable, and recently I sat down with her and discussed some real-life struggles and how she's tackled them. It's very inspirational. Tell me, how did you, it's almost surprising to me that, because I know you for so long, that you had this kind of problem. What happened? How did you start falling into that hole?
Well, you know, I have a letter in my book from my great-great-grandpa, Grandpa J.B., who was born in the 1860s, and he wrote a letter to his sons saying, boys, stay away from John Barleycorn. And in the letter he talks about his withdrawals from addiction, where he saw snakes and raccoons and this is homemade whiskey, you know, and the terrible withdrawals. So it's a hereditary disease. And I also, interestingly, I was engaged to someone who was working his life out, so I found out about 12-step programs. And a couple of years later I realized that I needed to get sober. And I've learned so much over the 28 years of my sobriety, which is why I finally decided to put it into the book. But what I did is I walked into the rooms, you know, the AA rooms, and right here in New York City, and got sober. And it was just one day at a time, putting your feet together, learning coping skills. Very, very important. You know, God, of course, I've always believed in God, but it's interesting to me that God is still the cure for alcoholism. There isn't anything else that cures. There's no pill or anything that cures alcoholism. And coping skills, learning like HALT. I think you'll appreciate this one. HALT. I love HALT. I'm teaching my daughter about HALT. Don't get too hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, because when we do that, it's very, very hard to cope.
Well, it's funny that you would say hungry, because in actuality, when you take sugar, alcohol, breads with gluten and things like that, your liver looks at them all kind of the same. Mm-hmm. I actually got drunk one night because I ate too much candy all day long.
Oh.
So I know that it's part sugar addiction and it's part genetic addiction. But how did you break the sugar addiction part? Because you're talking about don't get too hungry, and that was the first of HALT.
Well, it's interesting you would say that. I had I was starting to get dizzy myself, even in sobriety, 26 years later, and I couldn't really figure out why. And I was going to all these doctors, and I was saying, you know, and I couldn't figure it out. And finally one doctor said, let me take some blood work and see what you're allergic to with your foods. And I found out, just like you're saying, I was allergic to gluten, to wheat, yeast, to dairy, all the things that almonds, all the things that I was throwing in my body, eggs, thinking I was hypoglycemic and I needed to eat all these things, actually ended up being things that I was allergic to. Interestingly enough, I was also allergic to brewer's yeast, which is beer, right?
Was that one of the things that you liked to do?
Yeah, beer, you know, wine, champagne was probably the thing I liked the best. But nevertheless, it's interesting how allergies work. And since I have stopped those foods, I'm a new person. I'm completely different.
You also speak in your book about you're not going to do any plastic surgery, that you'd like to grow old gracefully.
Yes.
What does that mean to you, growing old gracefully?
I don't want to put Botox in my body, for one thing, because I don't know. I know it's supposedly okay, but to me it's like botulism in my head. I don't want to do that. But also, I don't want to go under the knife. I think it's always a risk with, doing that, and I really... I can just say to myself, well, Julie, I'm a single mom, my daughter, my mom died having plastic surgery. I'm like, well, that would not be really great. That wouldn't be a great thing. But I also just believe in aging gracefully. I don't want to put any products on my face if they're not completely natural. I only use shea butter, and I just don't use anything with a lot of ingredients. Whether I eat or put it on my skin, if it's got more than about 4 ingredients, I don't do it.
Well, it seems to be working for you. Sobriety, you look amazing, you look happy, and you're working.
Yes.
And your new book.
Yes.
A Little Bit Vulnerable. Thank you for coming to talk to us.
Thank you, Carol. It's really good to see you, and thanks
nice
for all that you do.
Yeah, thank you.